Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my co-host and good friend, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be here.
So nice to have you once more. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about midpoint composite charts.
Yeah.
So this is a technique where you take two different charts from two people and you combine them.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a moment, in a special way to show the actual relationship.
Yeah, and it creates its own whole new chart.
A whole new chart.
As if it was a person.
Yes, and it's amazing. And this is often used, I think, for relationships, boy-girl things. But today we're actually going to be discussing our composite chart.
Yeah, so a bit about what the composite chart is and what it does and what you use it for, and then using us as an example.
Exactly.
As we love to do. Yeah.
Okay, so the basics for a composite chart is if you've got two charts, what you're going to do is you're going to take person A's sun position and you're going to take person B's sun position and you're going to find the midpoint between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So if my sun is at 10 Leo and your sun is at 10 Libra, the midpoint would be 10 Virgo.
Right.
And in the composite chart, the composite sun will be at 10 Virgo.
Yeah.
And that's just me using some rounded numbers. But generally, I mean, my son's at 17, your son's at
5 Virgo.
5, and you got to get your brain engaged, and you get the midpoint between the two.
Yeah.
So our sun position will be a specific space in the composite chart.
Yeah.
So that's then the same for the moon as well, where we take our two moon positions. Your moon's in Taurus, my moon's in Scorpio. We happen to have a composite moon in Libra, and it's just the midpoint between the two moons.
Yeah.
So what happens is you're taking all the points that are the same, sun, sun, moon, moon, Mercury, Mercury, finding a new position as the composite sun, moon, or Mercury, and then putting it in the chart.
Yeah. So I have two questions.
Yes.
So first one is, what if you had your sun at, let's say, 1 degree Pisces, and I had my sun at 1 degree Virgo?
Yes.
What's the midpoint? Which direction do you go?
Well, you're going down to the minutes at that point.
Oh.
So you're going to degrees, minutes, and technically seconds. That's
and
why
likely it's not 0, 0, 0, 0 of both of us.
Exactly. So there will be one side that is that you will have midpoints on both sides.
Yeah.
So you've got your closer midpoint, which is the one we take, and then of course you've got the opposite midpoint on the other side of the chart.
Interesting. That would be the descendant anyway, so it's still important.
Exactly. Yeah. So this can, and if you do have two moons, say, that are opposite each other, there is the potential for either side, but technically you still want the closer midpoint.
Right.
Now, this brings up interesting situations where you can have the sun and, say, Mercury on one side of the chart, but for some reason Venus ends up on the other side of the chart.
Or the sun and Mercury opposite, which would never exist in a real person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the way you overcome that is the sun's position dominates. Mm-hmm. So you then bring that Mercury or that Venus, it only happens with those two, to the other side, to the other midpoint. Mm-hmm. Because you want your Mercury and your Venus near the sun. And in composite charts, it's not always the case.
Yeah.
So it's called the composite chart paradox when that happens.
Interesting. And the other way of getting around that, I suppose, would be, and this was my other question, about Davison charts.
Yeah.
Which is another method, which we don't have to go into super detail about, but just to mention it, when people talk about like a midpoint in time or a Davison chart, that is it Davidson or Davison?
Yeah, Davison.
Davison. Yeah. Anyway, this is like when you take our birthdays and you actually calculate the exact midpoint of that in time and in space.
Yes.
So you'd find, someone who was, I guess, born in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for the two of us.
In our case, right? Because you were born in Vancouver, I was born in England.
Yeah.
So our Davison will be in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And it will be at a time between my year of birth and your year of birth and the month and the exact moment in time.
Yeah. The good thing about that, and I'm not sure how this works with regular composite charts, but the good thing with the Davison ones is that you can progress them.
Yes. But you can progress composites too.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's basically two types of charts here. The one is the midpoint composite, where you're taking the midpoint, and then there's the Davison, which is an entirely different thing that he only invented it like in the 70s.
Right.
Brilliant. When I first came across that, I was blown away because I thought, this is a clever idea.
Right.
Just showing you that even modern astrologers can come up with new techniques for astrology.
Totally.
And if you've got something bubbling under as in your back journals, come forward with it, because new astrology techniques are coming forward all the time, and that proves it.
It does. And if you have a long-term relationship, or even if you're just like a super, keen astrology student and you want to do every little thing like I did when I started learning.
Yes.
I took my partner and I did every combination of possible charts, and I did the regular composite and the Davison composite and then some other, synastry and looking at all those charts next to each other. What's fascinating is the things that are actually the same.
Yes.
Like, because some things will be, certainly the
That's
outer
right.
planets, everything from like probably Mars outward is going to be similar, unless you're really different in ages.
Yeah.
But I mean, my partner and I are 9 years apart, and I was shocked at how much was the same.
That's right.
When you do it, the two different composite methods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I find is that when you actually, if you're doing relationship work, and why wouldn't you, that the composite chart often pops up with major aspect patterns
that
actually show the relationship.
Yeah.
So you might think, well, how come Bob and Susie are going, what is it? And when you do the composite, you can see there's got this grand triangle, this dynamic particular connection.
And that's the sort of better than the sum of their parts thing.
Yes.
Where sometimes you meet a couple and, they're both okay, but when they're together, they're just the scintillating, or they're a power couple. The power couple. That's a great reason to do a composite chart, is like, what is it about them when they get together? Or you find people who, maybe they tried to be a couple, but it didn't really work, but they remained friends and now they're in business together, which I've always, because of who I am, found completely mystifying. Like, how I would rather run a relationship into the ground like a kamikaze than be friends with someone after something, hasn't worked out romantically. But for some people, it's just, that's just the beginning. We tried the sex thing, blah, 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 whatever. It didn't work, and now we're this power couple, and it's like, oh, what is the karma there?
And this is it. And this goes back to the point that you are attracted to people who technically your joint composite chart has something to say. Yeah. Because out of a group of 10 guys, you're going to pick one, dismiss one, and the other 8 are possible maybes.
Right.
But first off the bat, one will step forward as a potential for you.
Yeah. Oh, and then you can get really complicated and go, okay, so the composite chart, and compare the composite chart to each individual's chart.
Yes.
And that shows you like who benefits more from the relationship sometimes.
Yes.
And sometimes one person can subsume the other's personality or become kind of the boss. And then, maybe the other person is happy with it or not happy with it. And that can be seen in that individual's relationship to the composite chart.
That's right.
And I'm doing all these gestures with my hands that you can't see, but it's implied.
That's right. And also the benefit of working with composite charts over Davison is that you can do groups.
Yeah.
So you can put 2, 3, or 4, as many people as you like, into a composite chart. Yeah. You take the midpoints of you calculate all their sun positions, create the average midpoint for that position, and it will generate a chart.
Yeah.
So if you've got a family where there's mom, dad, and the kid, you can see that that's the family dynamic. Right. And then if granny comes to live, then the whole thing changes.
Yeah.
And it comes up if you've got a rock band or a music band or something like that.
Or a small startup.
And you want to bring in another guitarist, or I don't know what they do. Yeah. You can see, well, is this guy going to fit us better, or is that guy going to fit us better?
Right.
Will we benefit more in our composite with having, Mick Jagger singing for us, or somebody else who you've never heard of? Yeah. And that is what you can do with composite charts. That's why they're very clever.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But...
And then each of the band members could do a little, comparison to them and the composite chart and see who's going to benefit most from it. And
exactly.
Maybe you find out the bass player is going to go off on the solo thing and benefit the most about everybody.
Exactly. But if you're an astrologer and you're going into business with somebody else, you want to be doing the composite chart because there's going to be hidden things that you don't even see that's coming through there. Mm-hmm. And there may be benefits for you that show up in the composite chart, and that's why we interpret them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And it only occurred to you and I, last month, to think, well, we should look at our composite chart because it's not something we had looked at previously, and yet I've known you for 10 years, right?
That's true. And it's funny because, we did our synastry chart a long time ago when we had our old podcast, because I know that because we had our logo that actually was the synastry, biwheel.
Really?
And it was this beautiful, it created this gorgeous, 6-pointed star thing, and it was amazing looking, and it created, a lovely little icon. Yeah. But we have not done our composite chart.
No, so what we're doing is we're doing it now. I will actually put a copy of our composite chart on the blog post that's related to this podcast episode.
Yeah.
And which is great because we're not showing our natal charts technically. We're showing the composite chart.
Yeah.
And so we go from there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Arwynne, so having a look at our composite chart, just for our listeners, just to give you a bit of a clue in, we're ending up with an ascendant of 90 degrees Virgo.
Yeah.
Which is a super sign for the pair of us. I've got 3 planets in Virgo, you've got 3 planets in Virgo.
Yeah.
Here we have this fabulous ascendant in Virgo.
Shocking.
There are some planets in Virgo too, we'll get to that. But the point being that with having Virgo as the ascendant, now Mercury is our composite chart ruler.
Yes. I would have it another way.
Right?
If it was some other sign, I'd be like, what? I don't believe it. I'm a skeptic now.
And here we are, chatting, communicating, podcasting, Mercury rules podcasting.
Yes.
And here we are actually doing this podcast. So technically the first thing you're going to be looking at within this chart is not only aspects to that ascendant degree, but aspects to the chart ruler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we go straight in there, we've got Mercury is at 19 Leo, and it is conjoined the Sun, which is great. It very frequently is.
Yep.
And but these two are both in Leo. Now, really, with a composite, you want to pay attention to the houses as well. And in this case, fortunately, we've got Mercury in the 11th house.
Yeah. Awesome.
In Leo.
Yeah.
And it's our chart ruler.
Yeah.
And we're going out there to...
Yeah, to show
spreading the word.
Our faces and
our
our
group,
words.
Our tribe is following along. All our listeners, we see you in our 11th house, and we're happy that you're there. We're happy to communicate and chat with you.
Absolutely.
So the other major aspect to our chart ruler is actually a square down to Neptune, which is...
Well, I mean, I've got my Sun and Mercury square Neptune in my natal chart, so that doesn't offend me at all.
Me too.
Yeah.
And here we are. And Neptune rules, as you know, art.
Yeah, creativity.
And the pair of us are artists as on our second fiddle.
I love Neptune in the 3rd house. That is great.
It's a beautiful place to be, and
it's conjunct the North Node.
Yes.
In the 3rd house.
Yes.
North Node. That's also in my chart, which is
yes.
Yes. I can't recommend North Node in the 3rd house highly enough.
Yeah.
And it's in Scorpio, so that's amazing.
So I'm super happy with that because both you and I do art.
Yeah.
You do art. I don't want to say on the side. I mean, I do art on the side. I do. But it's more central than the side. Sometimes there's definitely art is every day. I'm tinkering with something.
I'm working on making it more central, but it's.
And you are definitely, particularly with your goddess artwork, all of your.
My new blog where I'm blogging about the goddesses.
Let's talk about that. Arwynne has a new blog.
MISPink.net.
MISPink.net.
Ms. MSPINK.net. Yes.
We will put a link below.
Yeah.
And you need to, we invite you as our listeners to go and check out the type of art that Arwynne is producing.
Subscribe.
Yes. Yeah. It's a fledgling site at the moment. We're talking freshly hatched, 48 hours ago?
Pretty much, yeah. But I'm going to be posting about all the different goddesses. I have a lot of content, and I will be publishing frequently. So if you scroll to the bottom of the homepage, you will see a large subscribe link. Please do subscribe. I would love to have you.
Yeah, that's great. And this is the type of art that appeals to you. I want to call it mythical and...
mythical, pin-up, fantasy.
Yeah, it's scorpionic. It really is.
It's the dark goddesses. It's the goddesses of war, the vengeance goddesses.
You're doing goddesses, right? Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
But here it is, right in our composite chart.
Yeah, Neptune in the 3rd house.
Yes, and it's squaring the actual chart ruler, which is critical here, that we are able to discuss it and talk about it and so on.
Yeah.
On the other side, I do art on my side project under Alison Hazel Art. I may put a link below, we'll see. Yeah. That is something entirely different. It's more about sketchbook art in primary colours. There's nothing dark about my side, but it's just it's a totally different thing. And my exploration as a hobby artist through acrylic and watercolour and whatnot. The point being that we are both not only astrologers, we're artists as well.
Yeah,
and that is reflected right here in this chart.
Fully, yeah.
The fact that it's a square, I might want to say it's an internal dilemma, but yes, I wake up in the morning and think, should I do astrology, should I do art? And one will pull me.
Yeah.
I don't call it a challenge. I think it's actually where I expend my energy, and I think you do too.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Creating new stuff and...
Yeah. And it has been a conflict most of my life because it's not the thing I do to make money. It's the thing I do
on the side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's been this conflict of like, do I push people to my website because it's mostly art and ranting and swearing,
Yes.
whatever. And now at the ripe old whatever age, I've finally been like, okay, whatever, it's me.
It's who you are,
fine.
and it's reflected, and we're happy to support the art that we both do. And it's
Grown-ups
entirely
have
different.
seen boobies and they can swear.
There you go.
That is what you'll find on my site.
There you go. So it's an entirely different art, but it is still art.
Yeah.
And that's reflected here in this actual aspect from our chart ruler.
Yeah.
The fact that the sun is conjoined the Mercury in the 12th house, I'm seeing this as a reflection of that we are, particularly because we're doing the podcast, that we're doing it privately in our socks, sitting here.
Yeah.
We're not going out in public doing it. We're not, I used to do a lot of lectures in astrology. I'm not really doing that
and
anymore.
the YouTube channel. This is
It's just more doing quietly, and it's an exclusive, listenership, and it definitely is that we have at the moment. It's growing, and I'm so thrilled about that, as you are.
Yeah.
But we're quietly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it world domination, but we're our message is finding the right ears, and I find that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The fact that the sun is conjoined Mercury, I think it's great. I'm very happy with that one.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So the next feature we're going to chat about now in our composite chart is the Pluto-Uranus conjunction, super tight, yes, in Virgo, yes, in the 12th house, yes, on the ascendant. It's actually in the ascendant Gorkilin sector, and that is really the roots of where we're coming from.
Yeah, it's almost like this world-changing generational aspect, but when you put it into a composite, like I'm going to call it a business for now.
Yes.
Okay, like why not? It's almost like, I don't know, how would you... I'm a little overwhelmed at how cool that is to have that right on the ascendant.
It's right on the ascendant.
Yeah, Pluto, Uranus, like for the one place I've seen that before that really affected me, was in Kurt Cobain's chart. This is the third podcast I've mentioned him, by the way. I don't know why, but it just keeps coming up. But he was this generational voice, and he was born in 1967. He was a Pisces, and he had the Pluto and Uranus conjunction right on its ascendant, opposite his sun in Pisces. And it didn't work out well for him as a person, but yet we are still 20, 30 years later talking about him. It's almost 20 years, 30 years after his suicide. So yeah, I mean, this is a generational voice, and it's really kind of cool and striking to see something that I'm attached to that has that same
exactly
aspect.
Well, I was happy to see that, honestly, Uranus, which is the planet that rules astrology, on our ascendant, in your face. There's no question about it.
And Uranus is in the
12th house.
Right on the ascendant, though.
Right on. It is. It's right there in the Gorkilin sector. It's actually rising. If you looked at the horizon, it was there. And we are talking astrology. We might digress into this and that, but we're not talking numerology, tarot reading, or palmistry. We're talking astrology, and this is prominent. We're here within our chart. Yeah. Also, with it being the Pluto being closely associated there, we know that was back in the 60s, but in the composite chart, it's bringing deep diving, it's bringing transformation, hopefully, through astrology, not only for you and I, but for our listeners and our tribe who follow along.
Yeah.
So that's how I want to express this. This is how I see this being expressed. It's not something that we're banging with a drum, because it is still 12th house.
Yeah.
But the crucial energy of Uranus on the ascendant is quite dynamic for this actual position.
Absolutely.
So that's very interesting there.
Yeah.
The next conjunction that is kind of interesting is we have in the first house, we've got Venus conjoined Saturn.
Yeah.
Now, Venus is in Virgo, so that's in fall, and Saturn is in Libra, so that's exalted. So between the two of them, they're coming together.
Yeah.
So we are trying to, once more, if we take Venus as a representation of women, which is what we're talking about, it's the women's issues. We talk about that quite a bit. We also talk about art quite a bit as well, music, movies, and what have you. Yes, relationships, love, and all the rest of it. Yeah. And the Saturn there is that we're trying to present it in, I want to say, organized form so that our listeners can follow along with what we're trying to say about this. And that will come through this Saturn.
Yeah, and even though we have, humor and irreverence and lighthearted approach, and we try to focus on the positive and blah, 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 we obviously take astrology seriously.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, this is something that we 100%
We've got
have in
years
common.
of experience.
Absolutely. And you say that your art is not at all dark, and mine is like focused on the dark goddesses, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the Venn diagram of our interests intersect with, we are both very serious about astrology and about the way we present our
Yes.
quote unquote extremely invasive hobby.
It is. Well, it's more than that.
Yeah.
But we take it seriously. It's first house.
Yeah.
We're presenting it. If anybody says to me, "Oh, what you do on the weekend?" I say, "Oh, I'm podcasting." And then once you open that rabbit hole, I'm going down it.
Yeah.
I won't shove it down people's throats if they don't open the conversation.
No.
But once they open that conversation about astrology, I'm mentioning podcasts, and we're going through and expressing
and
how
I'm handing them our business cards.
We're handing out our
which
business
I've been
cards.
giving out like candy.
Yes, to help grow our podcast, and because we're taking it seriously, we're doing and we're trying to make it look pretty and beautiful, and
Absolutely.
So I see that as an expression of this Venus conjunct.
I do too.
Saturn.
And I think when you take something seriously, anything, it does make people curious. It makes people want to give it a chance. And even if they were, inclined to be skeptical, they're like, well, what is this? We respect you. We like you.
Yes.
You've put yourself forward in a pleasing way. What is this? Why are you talking about this?
Yes.
And then that opens the door.
That's right. And there are multiple astrology podcasts, but 80% of them are horoscopes where they're saying, hey, today this and that.
Yeah.
Leo today this and that. Virgo today this and that. That's entirely different to what we're doing. We're actually looking at a deeper how individually you can take astrology and it can benefit your life in ways. And this is what we're trying to go
and evergreen content, not just about what's happening right now. We do have some transit episodes, but those are also evergreen because we talk about we talk about different aspects, and maybe the Sun and Neptune are going to be conjunct in, something, but what does it look like in your chart? What celebrities and historical figures also have that? And
exactly
those aspects occur once a year usually. So.
Exactly. This is the point that there are many ways to do astrology, but we are taking we're taking a niche, which is astrology. We're refining it down to what we are packaging for our listeners. And I think that is shown through this Venus conjunct Saturn, that we are stayed honestly on our message.
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing. You know what you're doing. We know where we're going.
Yeah.
And we're going down a particular road astrologically. We're not all over the place talking about, the moon went into Leo. We're not even talking about that. But we were considering how actually astrology can benefit you, even with a little knowledge.
Yeah.
It can improve your life. Not everyone who listens to us is going to be an astrologer.
Not at all.
But they will be what I call astrology adjacent.
Yeah. Astrology curious.
Astrology curious, friends of astrology, whatever it is.
Allies.
Yeah. And that's why I like to, and we do like to present our topics in a way that gives you something to think about during the week after you've listened to the episode.
Yeah.
So I'm I was thrilled to see this Venus conjunct Saturn because it's bringing it in that way, I believe. Yeah,
absolutely. A couple of other features in this chart that are really interesting are the Mars in the 10th house.
Yes.
In Cancer, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And just having Mars in the 10th house is such a dynamic and ambitious and energizing position, regardless of what sign it's in. And the fact that it's in Cancer is like, we're nurturing, we're bringing you something that's going to be nourishing and feeding you knowledge.
Yes.
And we're putting our face to the world in that way. And
the midheaven for our listeners is a 12 Gemini.
Yes.
So once more, Mercury is ruling that midheaven.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How the world knows us.
Yeah.
Through the podcast, technically, that's going to be how it's going to be, because that will be how people will find us to start with.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great position.
And Mars there in the 10th house is energizing. I'm amazed we haven't missed a beat here. We've got these episodes going out.
Yeah.
We began it every second week, and then it went to every week, and now we're twice a week. We're not short of things to talk about.
No.
That is for sure.
No, I sat down and wrote a list of future topics, and
it's just endless.
It just went on and on and on.
Yeah, and there's so many ways that we can express and put our energy, which is Mars, into putting this out there into the public domain.
Yeah.
To keep polishing things, looking back to our earlier episodes, we're a lot smoother now. The links are working better, and all of these things. There are multiple things that go on behind the scenes, behind just recording this podcast.
Yeah, and we're pulling new people in.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
And people are reaching out, which is great.
Yeah,
so not everyone's suitable, but many people are reaching out, which is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that Mars is particularly nice up there as well. Yeah.
Definitely.
So we've got the moon down here now in the second house, in Libra.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a quiet moon there. Perhaps we have to be in touch with our values, and this goes back to what I was just saying, that we're trying to provide valuable information about astrology, but without being boring.
Yeah.
And
without kind of overstaying our welcome. Like, it's not a daily thing. We're not making you listen to something 10 minutes long every day, like some podcasts do, which I can't be bothered. Honestly, if a podcast is like 10 minutes long, I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
Why?
We're exploring different, and we want to make you feel welcome.
Yeah.
We care about your time. We value your time, and that's why we get straight into it. When we open the podcast, we're straight in. There's not a lot of waffle about what the dog did last week, and we're trying to get straight to it and stay on topic without the waffle. Yeah. There's many ways that this can go, but I think that's it's a quiet little moon sitting there. It's not high profile moon. I think it's a great little moon there.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense for the two of us, because we've always talked about how we're not we're lunar people as much as
no.
It makes sense that our moon is kind of like, all right, there
dinky little moon. Yeah,
doesn't do much, and
all right.
So we have Eris in the 8th house.
Yes.
That's an interesting one. I mean, everyone who was born in the last 100 years almost has Eris in Aries.
Yes,
it's got a very elliptical orbit, and it's way past the orbit of Pluto.
Yeah.
So Eris in Aries.
It's a badass goddess.
It's a badass goddess.
And we're happy to have it in our charts.
We
of
are.
All the planets, this is the one, right?
Yeah, and stuck there in the 8th house, awesome. Yeah, it's just like, yes, here I am. We're going to talk about astrology. We're going to talk about badass goddesses.
We're going to go deep.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about women.
Yes.
And women of a certain age.
And certain, I don't want to say traumas, but, life is not just a bowl of cherries, is it? It's women's issues and the fight. We're definitely those type of women.
Yeah, absolutely. And when people ask us questions about the darker side and whatever, we're not afraid to say, here are some answers. Here's what we think about that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did do a full episode on Eris, and I'll put the link to that below the podcast as well. Yeah. And Arwynne's done some fabulous art as her badass goddess Eris.
Yeah.
And we can definitely put the link to that too, to showcase the type of things that we work on. Now, this is 8th house, so it's quite private.
Yeah.
Or in a way, it's not the thing right in your face, but it's there. Yeah. It's adding a certain tone, I think, to some of our episodes.
Yeah.
And we're happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go there if we have to.
Yeah.
For women's issues, not for men, but for women's issues, yes. Yeah, so that's one way of looking at that Eris there. Yeah. Yeah, so Arwynne, composite charts in general are great things if you've got a husband or a partner or a wife or whoever, a special somebody, certainly do the composite chart. Yeah. If you're in business, which we are, and I don't know what took us so long, we decided to have a look at our composite chart. I really quite like the way this is expressed. It does express our relationship because we're not in each other's pockets. Yeah. And you live a different life to what I do. Yeah. And you've had different experiences and so on. But we've come together. Yeah. And this is shown in this composite chart.
Yeah. So, here's a question.
Yeah.
Someone might be thinking, if I don't know the birth time of my business partner, which sometimes you won't, you barely can ask someone's birthday these days without sounding kind of weird. Yeah. How does that affect the composite chart? Is that okay?
I would, for then I would take a noon time for that birthday.
Interesting.
But technically, because you're years apart, it's not going to make much difference.
Right.
We're talking minutes on the movements of the planets,
exactly.
Right? So if the sun was at 12 degrees Libra, it's going to be at that degree in the day anyway, no matter what time they were born.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might not be exact clearly, and the ascendant will be different. Yeah. But the planets themselves will be correct when you do noon charts.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is, it's a great way of looking at charts. It's a great way of seeing, and you can put transits to them and progressions to them. So if we wanted to say, Pluto's going through Capricorn now. It's just entered Aquarius. For us, it's going through our 5th house in this particular case, if we wanted to look at that. Yeah. But really, that's irrelevant. We want to look at what's happening with the Leo Virgo, because that's where our energies are being expressed.
Yeah.
And it's reflected in this composite chart.
Yeah.
I think they're great things. I mean, with my husband and I, of course, I did the composite chart, and we looked like, together, we were just dynamic. But, you don't know until you've done the chart, and that's why you need to do them.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Yeah, so that is great. So, yeah. Okay, Arwynne, so for our listeners, we've spoken about midpoint composite charts. We've explained how to get them sorted out. We've discussed the one that we have between ourselves as business partners, technically, and some way of interpreting them. I think it's a great thing. And everyone's got someone in their life. You can see, even as a parent, you get on with one kid better than you do the other, no matter what you say.
Yep.
You absolutely do, or you get on better with this sister rather than that sister, and it's through these composite charts. So I urge everyone to have a go at calculating composite charts.
Absolutely. And even the people you don't get along with, it's interesting to see what's going on there.
Exactly. Yeah. So let me thank you so much again for coming here today to discuss composite charts. It's been wonderful to have you.
It's been wonderful to be here. Thanks, Alison. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the 2 main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer, or someone who's learning astrology, or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.